Hello everybody, welcome to Nostalgia Goggles. I'm Chris, also known as Retro Gaming Nerd, and I didn't grow up with Mario 64. Instead, I grew up with Zelda Ocarina of Time, and so I feel like due to the circumstances of what happened recently, mainly Charles Martinet's retirement to Mario, I think it's about time we go back and talk about Mario 64. One, because it's a very iconic game, and two, because I feel like it's about time to talk about it. I talked about Ocarina of Time, so I might as well talk about 64, right? To kind of see if Mario 64 is worth playing today. Now, before we get started, I know that you probably noticed that this is the Mario 3D All-Stars box, and not the, 64 box. Well, that's because, either I think we lost it in the move, or I think I might have sold the copy because we have this. So I'm sorry that you gotta look at this, but this is what we got. With that being said, let's move on to the review. So the story of Mario 64 is that Princess Peach invites Mario over for some cake, but unfortunately for Mario, Bowser has taken over the castle and has enchanted the paintings. So it is your job as Mario to get a whole bunch of stars, save the princess, and return the castle to normal. I don't really have much to say about the story except for that it's there, and it doesn't really need a story. I feel like this game relies heavily on gameplay. I feel like the story is good enough, but there's nothing really to criticize because, after all, let's be honest with you, Mario deserves some cake after all the journeys he's been through. So I kind of, I don't know, that's good incentive. And I think now that I think about it more, I think that it kind of is a better story than I'm thinking of because of the fact that it's all happening without Mario acknowledging that Bowser took over the castle. So I feel like that's interesting because normally it's Bowser captures Peach and there's a big hubbub about it. This one's just he casually captured her and Mario kind of didn't know. I feel like I could throw humbug at the story if Peach was sending a letter to Mario about needing help, but he didn't. And I think that that's interesting because this is a very early on game too. So they really changed up the formula here. I'm sorry I had this weird revelation in mid-recording, but hey, that's what happens when you don't script things. With that being said, let's move on to the gameplay. Mario 64 is the first attempt at putting Mario into 3D, and I think it is a good attempt. Not a perfect attempt, mind you, but a really good attempt. The idea of Mario 64 is interesting, and I've talked about it multiple times throughout my episodes with Mario 3D Land and Zelda Ocarina of Time, that Mario 64 is interesting because they didn't really have a template, and Mario 64 decided to go against that template anyways. Mario's original philosophy was the idea of you have to work with power-ups alongside only having so many hits and so many lives. This game does kind of keep the lives, but this one added life points to the game instead of it being 1 or 2 hits and you're done. The original Mario games had a power-up that was your buffer. See, that allowed you to take an extra hit. Mario 64, on the other hand, decides to negate that and allows you to have multiple hits, and that makes sense due to the fact that you have to navigate in a 3D space. Not saying that this couldn't work. This is what I'm really describing is what I said in my Mario 3D Land. And I think that it's really interesting to see some concepts exist in the 3D space of this game, such as having the Koopa shells work the way they do, the power-ups work the way they do. For instance, in this game the power-ups that you have is the metal cap, an invisible cap that allows you to go through things, and a flying cap, and all of them work in a 3D space. The metal cap makes you heavier, so it allows you to go into water and be able to stay on the ground, so that's cool. I want to call it translucent cap, I don't know the name of it, but it also allows you to go through things, once again, really cool for a 3D space. It allows you to go through paintings and gated areas, and the flying cap, once again, is the perfect example of, hey, we made a game in 3D, let's utilize it. I think that the other caps are better than the fly cap. I love the fly cap, but I feel like it's just not all there, but then again, what are you really gonna do? You only have so much space. Mario 64 also is a video game that is set level to level, and the level design on these games are great. but I feel like later on in the game they become a little rough, and I don't know, I just feel like they put a lot of effort at the beginning, and the latter levels feel a little bit more unreasonably challenging, and that might just be me not growing up with the game, but I feel like that also comes from the controls as well, where Mario 64 is a bit rough, especially nowadays. The effort that they put into the platforming mechanic is outstanding, but it's one that got improved upon so much so in the later games like Odyssey, Sunshine, and Galaxy that it's kind of rough to go back to this one. Not saying that this is a bad game, mind you, it's just those ones feel so much smoother, which makes sense. It's not fair to compare the games. I feel like if you understand those games, you can understand this one very well. But I will say that it is kind of rough, and that is mainly because it's on the Nintendo 64. The camera isn't 100% there. Realistically, nothing is 100% here. It is a definitely good testing grounds for Mario, and it's really fun to play, but I feel like at the end of the day, yeah, it's a little bit rough, but it's not too rough that you can't handle it. All in all, I feel like the gameplay for Super Mario 64 is really great and actually outstanding if you think about this being the first concept for a Mario game. So, a 3D Mario game. So, with that being said, I think that it's solid, and I also feel like I don't have any much more to say, so let's move on to presentation. So, I normally don't like to make fluffy pieces in my episodes, but I'm going to do it here. I feel like when it comes down to the presentation of this game, one of the things that we have to address is Charles Martinet. Charles Martinet is the person that voiced this character. The reason why I say this is because he no longer voices Mario, but he did voice him, and this is the first time we've seen him in a video game, and my god did he do a great job. I feel like 90% of this presentation is him, from the beginning to his little things he says in between. The way that he voiced Mario is so iconic that it's even hard to imagine that anyone else could do it. It's not like Mario didn't have a voice around this time either. The Super Mario Super Show and even other commercials had Mario voiced, and I believe that he was even voiced in the Supercade as Jumpman. So it's not like Mario was guaranteed to have this voice, but the voice that they chose and the voice that Charles Martinet chose to do as Mario made this iconic. I absolutely think if it wasn't for him, I mean, this game would have always been successful, but I don't know if it would have been as great because his performance was outstanding, making Mario the way we know him now. With that being said, let's move on to the rest of the game. So with the rest of the presentation, Mario 64 has one of those things that really takes me aback when it comes to coming to these old video games, and that is seeing how we translate video game characters from 2D to 3D, and this game was outstanding with it. With Monty Mole, Goombas, Koopas, Chain Chomps, Sniffits, they translated a lot of characters and added some new ones too. And Nintendo normally does that for the Mario games, but this one just is great. I absolutely love seeing these characters in 3D. They're a little rough around the edges, but that doesn't really matter because this whole game is made for the 64, and I think it's really cool to see them translated. Especially here, because the 64 had its own art style because the limitations that were made for it made it have to have a specific polygonal style of character models, and it's really cool to see these, and I feel like we're never going to see these again because we've advanced so much, so it's really cool to see what they did, especially since they could have just had simple characters and did what other games do and just have random characters and just said, hey, these are Mario characters. It's not the first time that they've done that. Heck, they do that now. I think that it's really cool to see them translated. Another thing that's really cool about this game is that the level design itself is a little hit and miss, but to see Mario in a 3D platforming space and see him in so many spaces between water, haunted houses, and Iceland, and, you know, even the Bob-omb Battlefield is really cool to see, you know, Mario in a 3D space. I absolutely love the way that these are, the way and how iconic these are. Heck, they're so iconic that LEGO made a block embodying that. And last but not least, the music is outstanding. Once again, this was an era of Mario music, I feel, and I just love it. I just think it's great. Realistically, everything about this game and presentation is really good, especially for the time and even now. Looking back at it, it's really cool. I would love to see, I guess, a Mario remake at some point, but if I had to say I want to see a Mario 64 remake, I think I would rather have it be based off of the promotional art that is in the game, which is shown here. but I think that realistically, this is one of those games that doesn't need one. It's fine as is. If you look at this and go, oh, it's ugly, you're kind of missing the point. It came out in blank year, and I think that it looks really good for that. So with that being said, let's move on to accessibility. So Mario 64 came out on many consoles, but I'm going to kind of focus on the physical releases of the game alongside the remake, because realistically most of the places that you can play it digitally no longer exist or is Nintendo Online, which is pretty much the price of paying for the expansion pass, so there's that. With that being said, let's talk about the 64 version of this game, which will set you back about $20 to about $38 at the maximum. And this is me just kind of like lowballing it. Now the thing that I feel like you have to be careful with this game is that there are some repo carts to this, and that just happens. I feel like it's a lot more common because the technology has made it to that point of being able to reproduce these kind of games in the house, which is hilarious because that's why Nintendo went with the way they did. They thought that discs were able to be easily pirated, and congratulations, like the 64 is one of them. That is pretty common. I don't think it's as common as the DS or the Game Boy, but it is still a thing. The next one coming up is Mario 64, and that one will set you back about $19 to $24, and that's me not being generous at all. I've seen it go for even lower in the teens. It depends on if you want it with the box or not, but I feel like either way, you're gonna pay about $24 solid. You're gonna pay about $60 to $114 or $100 in general for Mario 3D All-Stars. Why is this? It's because Nintendo's a little bitch that decided to make this game limited. Realistically, you could probably go to a store today and still pick up a copy of this game or go to GameStop, whatever. It's not that uncommon of a game physically. Can you get it digitally? Absolutely not. But you can get this game still. It's interesting because I feel like the only reason why it's this price is because it was limited, not because it's, you know, actually hard to find. So I feel like you can kind of shop around and see if you want it. I think though, if I'm gonna be honest, $60 is the way to go for this game. I feel like if that's too much, probably check out Amazon or check out like many other places, especially since the Nintendo Switch isn't region locked, so you're able to, like, you know, kind of shop around for this one. Take your time. I feel like 3D All-Stars is an outstanding game, or 3D Collection, All-Stars, whatever you want to call it, is an outstanding game, and I feel like it's definitely worth owning, especially if you didn't, especially since that time lit window that they had was so small. It was only a year to get your hands on a game, and I feel like, you know, that's not enough time. So with that being said though, I feel like this is my favorite way to play this game. Okay, so 3D All-Stars is one of my ways that I absolutely love to play this game, but I feel like all ways are valid. I think if I do have to recommend another way, obviously, is the NSO, that is the closest to that, and last but not least, the DS version. It's very different, that's getting a whole video on its own, but I feel like if you're somebody like me that has played 64 so many times and kind of want something different, the remake is the way to go on the DS. With that being said, let's move on to the goods and the bads. I feel like all in all, this game is solid on all approaches, and I feel like it might not be what a lot of people are expecting it to be, especially since I feel like Mario 64 is kind of overhyped as a game. I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean like a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for it, and I feel like, as that being said though, I feel like it makes sense. This game is a very solid attempt at the 3D Mario, especially since it's the only one at the time. And I think it had so many good things in it, such as like the long jump and, you know, so many other really good concepts here that without this game we wouldn't have 3D Mario as is. And I think that that's enough for the goods. But I feel like another thing that I really like about this game is the music. Once again, is really good. Charles Martinet's performance is outstanding. I feel like the level design is very smart. And I feel like all in all, this game is straight up solid. There is some issues that can be said with this game, but you also have to understand that this game is old and it is the first of its kind. And I feel like the fact that Nintendo and just the developers in general put so much time and effort into a game like this to make it good is outstanding, especially since this could have been like Bubsy 3D or many other attempts at the 3D gameplay. I mean, yes, this one came out technically first, but still it could have been a disaster. Translating a strictly 2D character into 3D could have just not worked, and this game did a really good job at making it work. With that being said, this game is not perfect, mind you, so let's move on to the bads. So I feel like this game, controls are the worst thing about this game, and even then, that's not the biggest issue in the world because it's something that you can get over. It's an old game, right? Like, it's old. I can't sit here and just be mad at a game for being like, oh, it doesn't control, some of the jumps don't work, blah, 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 blah. It's whatever. Because I feel like everything else outweighs that, like, issue. Because the levels themselves work very well. I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like I'm just bitching for no reason at the end of the day about the controls. It's something that I feel like is noted. I feel like it's something that you should definitely, you know, account for, but that's really the biggest issue that I have with this game is definitely the controls, and maybe, just maybe, the fact that the Mario 3D All-Stars is no longer available. I feel like that's another big issue because that is my favorite way to play this game outside of the DS remake. And I feel like that's a shame. It's not like it's the only way you can play this. You can play this on the Nintendo Online, whatever, and I talk about that in accessibility. But when you give us one of the better versions of the way to play it, and then you give us kind of turds, I feel like you can't expect us to be, you know, happy with it. I feel like at the end of the day, there's not really much bad I can say about this game. Now, that's also because I didn't heavily grow up with this game. As I've said in the intro, I grew up with Ocarina of Time instead, barely acknowledging this game's existence. But I feel like that's something that that's all I have to say about it, is that the controls are a little rocky. That's it. That's all. With that being said, let's go on to the final thoughts. So is Mario 64 worth playing today still? Well, I feel like that's kind of a tough question, because there's multiple reasons to play the game, and no matter what, it's always going to be the first Mario game, so there will always be appreciation, but I also don't know the tolerance of a younger person playing this game today. Because as much as I want to say, yeah, that it holds up, especially since I have no nostalgic value to it, there still kind of is a claim to the Nintendo 64 that I have. So there is still a little bit of nostalgia there. Not only is it nostalgia because of that, it's also because I grew up with this game through YouTube. So there's always going to be some kind of nostalgic barrier. And with me saying that, there might just be some other people that have that. I don't know if this is the best way to play this game, because there is a remake that I think is great, but all in all, I think this game is still worth playing, and with that being said, I also feel like I kind of want to add one more thing to this video. Now, I normally do not like to do these thank you videos or these kind of special things, but I think it's a time that I think I should, because this person has been very important to a lot of gamers' lives, and I know that everyone's doing this video, but I think that I should kind of acknowledge it too. With that being said, I want to say, if he ever watches this video, I doubt it, but I do want to say in this video, thank you to Charles Martinet for voicing Mario for as long as you did. The retirement saddened me, but I'm also happy to hear that, you know, so many people are grateful to him. I'm bad at this. One of the things that's great about Charles Martinet is that he's one of the few people that was really cool to meet in person. I met him back at Too Many Games, and I got him to sign a plushie for my son, Milo. And it's really cool because Milo absolutely loves Mario, and Charles Martinet's voice is the one that he knows, and it's the one that he's growing up with, and it's the one that I know and I'm growing up with and my partner knows. And it's really cool to just, you know, have him being Mario for as long as he did. And it's really cool how much effort he put into the voice. You can see it in this game. And I think that that's great. You can see it in almost every game he does, but this one is kind of above and beyond. It's what made Mario the way we think it is today, and without him doing it, Mario could have been a different character. Now, I know that he's not the only voice of Mario. There's Chris Pratt, the person that did Super Mario Super Show, and even they could have went with something that Bob Hoskins did in the movie. But instead, they decided to stick with him for as long as they did, and I think that it's worth it, because that is always who my Mario's gonna be. So with that being said, one last time, thank you so much for being our Mario. With that being said, yeah, I think Mario 64 is still kind of worth it today. Really depends on where you're coming from. I'll see you guys next time on Nostalgia Goggles. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm really bad at these. Bye.
Thank you so much for playing my game.